back on Wednesday how we would, how to figure out what direction the arrow goes, whether it's open or closed circle and all that other stuff. If you missed any of that, I've got some copies of that over in the folder from Wednesday, and you can always get that from there. But whenever we're getting these done, we've got to have all of our x's on one side, we've got to have it alone, and then if we multiply or divide by a negative, we've got to flip the arrow. So, for instance, if I was doing number 1, what's my one step to isolate x? Minus the 11, okay? So, what we will do, thank you. 1 for 4. So, thank you. So, once we minus that 11, okay, x is greater than 5. So if it's greater, it means the numbers are getting larger. If the numbers are getting larger, right. So since this is greater than, my arrow is going to go to the right, and you're right. Since there's no arrow, well, there is an arrow. Since there's no line under my arrow, it's an open circle, and it's going to the right. So number 1 is going to be C. Now, I wish they'd have put another one at 5, so you've actually had to make a choice. But, what can we do? So if we're doing the same thing on number 2, what's my one step to get x alone? Plus the 6. And seeing your steps sometimes can help us to see how this is going to work. The arrow is not eating x this time. The arrow is pointing at x. So when that happens, when the arrow points at x, that's less than. And whenever I have less than, my arrow is going to be going to the left. Now remember, one of the things we talked about Friday, because some of you are like, oh, so I can just basically follow this arrow every time. If the x is on the left, yes, you can. Okay? This one, right. There's my 7. It's an open circle, so it ends up being less than. So it ends up being E. Okay? Let's take a look at one more up here. Then I want to jump down a little ways. What about number 3? What's my one step there? All right. So we're going to minus some 2, or we could do a negative 2. It's the same idea. Ooh, let's see how sharp we are with our mental math on Monday morning. Negative 3 minus 2. I owe my friend $3 and I borrow 2 more. Negative 5. It's going to be less than, yes. Okay, notice here, my dot's colored in. Well, why? Because I have a line underneath my arrow. That one would be A, and I would kind of keep working those. Okay, so when it's matching, that kind of makes life a little bit better for us. However, if I move down some, we're going to stress a little more of the inequality here. But we're also going to draw some graphs of them to get a little more practice. If I can keep this to stay here, move up a little more. So if you look up at the top, rule number 1 says get all x's to one side if they're not. Ooh, they're not. They're on opposite sides. So what's one way? Let's say since we like getting our variable term over here, that's more normal. How can I move that minus or that negative 2 end to the other side? What's the opposite of minus and 2n? Got it. Okay, and I'm doing this because they're on opposite sides of the arrow. So 8 plus 2, 10n, and I copy everything else. The only thing that's changed is my 2n group. So once my n's are all together, and they are now, I've only got one n term. My new goal now is to isolate or get that n term alone. So what's my next logical step? Okay, plus 10, because I want to get that minus 10 away from my term. So 10n, and then divide by 10. And don't freak out if you get a decimal somewhere. That's not a big deal. So if I get something like this and then I go to graph it, couple of reminders again from Friday. When I'm graphing an inequality, I need at least 3 lines. If you want to make more, you can. Whatever my answer that I get is, that number goes in the middle. And then I have to have one number to the left and one number to the right. We're going to graph on a couple of these, just to get a little practice. I agree. 1.7 could go over here. What could go on the other side then? 1.5. Because the value gets less as I go to the left and greater as I go to the right. Because I'd rather have like $1.70 than $1.50. So, 2 questions remain. Okay, well, let's see. What type of dot goes on 1.6? Open or close? Open, because it's just less than, because the arrow's pointing at n means less. So what direction is my arrow pointing with less than? Less than goes left. They both start with L. Yeah, if there's a line under the arrow, it's closed. If there's no line, then it's going to be open. Okay? So let's see here. Let's come over to 8 for right now. Ooh, fraction. Yuck. How do I get rid of the fraction in number 8? Okay, the opposite of dividing by 2, which is what a fraction is to multiply by 2. And some of you, when we did that little mini equations quiz for extra points last week, were real good about figuring out how that part works. So we get that. Now that the fraction's gone, my job is to work on getting what's in the box alone. So if I minus the 6, because we always are doing opposites to try and get and you even caught me before I even had to ask. Nicely done. Right, once I get to here, and I have to divide because the minus isn't between the 3 and the x. This isn't 3 minus x. It's negative 3 times x. I have to divide to get that out of there. And like Marcus just mentioned, if I divide or multiply both sides by a negative to get x alone, kind of our remember number 3 up above, I have to flip the arrow. Okay? So the arrow flips if I divide both sides by a negative. Flips. My P got a little smush. Flip it? Flip it? What I'm trying to do I have to do oh, like graphing it, you mean? Specifically when you're only if you're specifically asked on an assignment you have to. I'm just doing it a couple here more. It's just kind of a little bit of a review for us. Okay? So when I go to graph this one, negative 6 goes in the middle. What's going to go on the right of that? What's going to go over here? Okay, that's one better than owing somebody 6. Now I only owe them 5, so that's better for me. Ooh, what's one worse though? Now I owe them 7. Okay, so let's see. My dot on negative 6, open or closed? Closed, because of the line underneath. And since x is greater than, since it's eating the x, it's going to the right. So I wanted to make sure we got a little bit of a graphing review in here too. But you'll notice a lot of this is like the equations we've been doing. Nope. You can move either. You move either end any. Good question. Now, when we flip over He's like, ooh, now he's starting to get into some weird ones. There's a difference between number 9 here and what I did. I'm not trying to get somebody a headache by flipping here. It's flipping. When we did number 6, notice my ends were on opposite sides of the arrow. Okay? So I had to do an opposite to get them together. Right. Now, since they're on the same side of the arrow, I'm just going to combine like terms. I'm just going to put them together. I'm not doing an opposite here. So if I got 9, ooh, then I minus 24. So I had $9, but then I spent 24. How far in the hole am I? Pretty far. Okay, I agree. I don't want to be this far in. Well, let's think of it this way. What's 24 minus 9? 15. And since the negative number is bigger, I'm going to copy the other part for right now. So I went from having 2 terms with my variable down to 1. But now that I'm to that part, now it's going to isolation mode here again. How do I get that plus 45 away from my 15n? Minus the 45. So negative 45. 0 minus 45 is negative 45. And I have one step left. Divide by negative 15 and switch the sign because I divided both sides by a negative. Dang, it's like a little bit of here. A negative divided by a negative is a positive. If I divide both sides by a negative, this one? Okay, if I divide both sides by a negative, I have to switch the arrow. I have to flip the arrow around. Yep. And then this one would just be like the rest. And this will be the last one I do this on. Then we'll just kind of go back into solving mode. So what numbers am I going to have on the left and the right here? 2 and 4. Open or closed at 3? Open. And n is less than 3. Less than and less. We'll start with L and go together. Okay. So then it's like, ooh. Okay, 10 gets a little ugly here too. And I know you're all just hardly wait for 13. Number 10, if I see any parentheses, I've got to distribute first before I do anything else. 3d, 3 times negative 2, negative 6. Just going to be patient with this. So we're in a situation similar to 9. Because now, I have more than one d term, more than one variable term, if they're on the same side of equals. So if I have 3 and then I lose 2 of them, how many have I got left? Just 1. I got 1d. You can put the 1 with the d if you want to. So now I got to do my one step to get d by itself. Add 6. And I'm done. So don't let, distributed properties, things like that, bug you. Let me take a look at it. 13 and 14 and a couple of these words, and I'll get you rolling. Lots of distributing this time. And this is going to test your patience and attention to detail. So I noticed a lot of you, when we did that equation little mini quiz for points, a lot of you do excellent on the regular steps, then it'd be just something strange. Like you'd write you're going to divide, then you subtract or something like that. So be careful, watch your signs. That's a minus 8. And this is a negative 2 that I'm distributing through. Negative times negative is positive. So many little places that can throw us off. So now, once we get here, we got a couple of things going on. First, anything that's alike on the same side of your arrow has to get put together. 2 and 2, 4n. And I also notice this time that I have numbers. We'll get there. Right now, I just notice on the right side I got n's to put together, and these two numbers are sitting there together. But the other side with the 3n, I can't put anything together yet, because the 3n and the 8 is different. One has a variable and one doesn't. So now, and again, if some of you are more comfortable with your n's continuing to go to the same side, you can. Anybody have a preference on whether we move the 4n or the 3n? So I can do either of it same. Okay, if we move the 3n, so it's positive, so I'd have to do a minus on that. Kind of glad that got chosen. Because now I'm like, okay, all my n's are together. What's my one step now to isolate my n? Plus 10. And here's where you have to be careful, especially if you were graphing this one. A lot of you would make your arrow automatically go to the left here, because you see, well, the arrow there's left, and every other time it's done the same. But on this one, notice the arrow's eating the end. This is greater than. Greater than doesn't go to the left. Greater than or equal to goes to the right. So that's one where I'm just going to put a drawing in, just so you can remind yourself. Don't get sucked into thinking just because, well, the arrow goes that way, that means the graph does. Necessarily, okay? We've got to understand that the arrow eats greater than. And then finally, down at the bottom, and we're just going to step these up. A number, again, whenever you see fancy words like a number, this means x. X decreased by, what's that mean? Minus 10 is greater than -5. Okay? I just want you to write these for right now, just to kind of see how this works. Say, don't solve it right now. I just want you to be able to go from the words to the inequality, because I'm confident you can solve it. What would 16 look like? 16 plus. Plus 1. Which way is my arrow going to point? To the left or the right? It's going to eat the 9. Okay? Because less than either points at the x side or eats the number side. Absolutely. 7 more than a number. What would that look like? Okay? Is less than or equal to -18. And you start to see the language that's involved with this, and hopefully it makes the regular math look better. So we have to throw the twist in. 20 less than a number. Nice, okay? 20 less means I have to minus the 20. Is at least 15. Okay? Most of the time we'll just see the less than or greater than or equal to, things like that. But just in case, we'll be ready with this. Oh, I was hoping to say that. It is. Okay, when it says at least, that would include 15, because 15 could be a possibility as well. So here's how we're going to do this. You're like, oh, we've only got, like I said, I purposefully held out on the actual sheet, which I'm going to come individually and kind of give to you now. Keep this out kind of as a help, because we've basically done one of everything. And I believe Thursday is going to be when we're going to do a little mini quiz. I think we're going to do a review on Wednesday. So